Hey, Todd, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike, Allison, how are you? Glad to be
Hi,
here.
Todd. Great to meet you virtually.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
absolutely.
so, Todd, I just gave a little blurb intro for you. I was telling people that you are the president, founder of Sachs Realty. You're a serial entrepreneur. But the one thing that I left out is that you are what I will call an avid podcaster. You've had your podcast now up for over 2 years, and you and I were doing a little green room stuff earlier this week, and you were doing all kinds of cool stuff with social media live and you guys he literally built a studio in his office. I was a guest on Todd's show a couple years ago, right when he was getting it off the ground. And just this is a man who takes things seriously. So, Allison and I were just talking about due diligence. Todd has due diligence, and he is candid enough to say that he has failed in the past, but he has been successful far more than he has failed. And he was telling me what a white knuckle experience it is to run and drive and market a successful podcast. And oh, by the way, yeah, Sachs Realty is a real estate company, and he's really good at that too. So, Todd, welcome to the show. So excited to have you.
Thanks so
Yeah.
much. Yeah, I'm really honored to be on your show.
Yeah. So
Definitely.
there are a couple segments we're going to do today. I'm going to take you through what is called the who, what, where, when, why, how. And
Hmm.
that's really going to be your opportunity to showcase your company and what you do and why you do it. You can even bring up your top five if you're so inclined. And then Allison is going to walk you through in the second half some great questions around leadership and team building, which I know you are a fellow book nerd like me. You know quite a bit about what it takes to become a great leader and what it takes to build a great team. I've gotten to work with a couple of your team members, and I know that Todd is very diligent when it comes to those things. So let's get this party started, as the saying goes. So
All
the who,
right.
what, where, when, why, how is free form. Why don't we begin with who? Who is Todd Sachs?
Yeah, so, I've been an entrepreneur since 1989. So, I was a very young guy, graduated high school, and was headed to, actually, was about to enlist in the Marine Corps. And my grandmother, who I lived with when I was a kid growing up, she developed cancer, and I put that on hold to sort of work and help her, and kind of over the next couple of years, it was a really tough time, and she ended up passing on. And I had was taking classes at a community college and had already started construction and a landscape business and to pay the bills, and while I was putting myself through college and taking care of my grandmother. And then I dropped out of school. I was in business law, and we were talking about things like what an LLC and the different types of corporations, whether it was a C corp or a subchapter S corporation. And I had already established a C corp, had started a business, had employees out in the field. And I remember I left for lunch. Honest truth. I mean, I left for lunch in class and just never went back. And it's kind of crazy. I mean, life, had I enlisted in the Marine Corps like I was pushed to do, I'd come from a military family, and or stayed in college. I mean, things might have been quite different. I was always a blue collar guy, so I started swinging a hammer and digging holes, and built a business around that. And then as things progressed, I mean, I was a contractor. NV Homes was one of my big clients. And back in the early 90s, they were going financially insolvent. I had a bunch of employees and really had my first taste of adversity when I couldn't pay my bills. And, we fought through it. I got married at a very young age and had children early on. And, there were some tough times, definitely some struggles. Fortunately, I'm a fighter, kept going and fighting through it. And, I really liked residential housing. I started building houses and renovating houses and did that for quite some time, really from, I guess, 1997 to 2005. We had a great career doing that. And then, of course, we went through another big crash of the housing bust Everybody knows it as the collapse of 2008. Again, realigned, readjusted. Sort of started Sachs Realty. I was with Long and Foster for a bunch of years, and then Berkshire Hathaway for about 3 years. At that point, I built a team of agents. I was focusing a lot on commercial real estate. In 2007, to kind of fast forward, sort of established what I would consider the epitome of my career, and that's the ability to teach everything that I've learned over the last 30 years being in construction and housing to other people. And so I started Sachs Realty in 2017, and here we are. So today, in the middle of a pandemic, and once again, learning how to navigate through the various storms and try and come out ahead. And that is what it's all about, whether you're self-employed or not.
And Todd, I want to stress to the audience that Sachs Realty is literally your company. So you're not a subdivision of Remax or Long and Foster or any of those, which is what a lot of people do. There's some big name real estate realtors out there, but they all fall under a shield. And I mean, talk about walking out to the edge of the branch where things aren't exactly safe. But you did that, and you guys, by all accounts, you're holding your own in a tough market.
We are, fortunately. I've never really been one to sort of go with the flow, or I've always challenged what is going on right now, like how business is being conducted, or what the market is currently doing, and I always try and look ahead. And I think the biggest thing was when I was with the larger brands was it was very hard. I sort of related to a big ship. So when you're part of that big ship, there are a lot of tiers to the ship, and then the captain's sort of like at the top. And when you have these great ideas, or you want to try and do things different, maybe you're seeing something that isn't being seen at that high level, and it's really tough to turn that ship or to even really get them to pay attention to what you're doing. So I knew that with what my plans were and how I wanted to utilize technology and social media. You talk about a podcast. I wanted to make sure that the only restrictions were what I gave myself, and that we could be that speedboat, if you will, that we could turn very quickly and navigate around that big ship, and just kind of make our own way. And so it has been challenging in a lot of ways because we don't have that big structure that a big ship has. So the challenges that we've had to overcome, or I've had to overcome, is really implementing the systems that I'm privy to, and sort of learning as we go along.
Yeah, and if I had to use a word to describe you, Todd, the word student comes to mind. You're somebody that believes in not only educating yourself, but educating your team members. And I think that's what your podcast is all about. It's really about teaching others and learning for yourself and getting better. Would you just mind share a minute on your thoughts on the student mentality?
Yeah, I think that you have to be a good scholar in what it is that you're doing. I mean, you have to. I'll say that I haven't always been academic. So I mean, going back to school. I mean, I've always, I was never really the academic one, but I was very wise, and I knew what I had to do to win. And I was always an athlete, very athletic, and but I know that you have to learn, you have to train, you have to learn, you have to know what your opponent's doing, you have to understand, what you need to do to win in that game or that arena. And so I've always, utilized my resources. But with that being said, I've always challenged what I'm being told, or what I'm reading or what I'm learning, because that's only their opinion. Books. I mean, a lot of books behind me. I do read a lot of books, but again, that's their success, and that's the way that they did it in a snapshot of time. So things are different. Some fundamentals don't change, but a lot does change. So I sort of take what has been done or what is being done and try and figure out what's missing. And that's a discipline. That's not an easy thing to do. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of hours. It takes a commitment that a lot of times goes far beyond what the average person is willing to do. And maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that, because it's not just about entrepreneurship or ownership. It's just about being successful at your job or your life. And everybody's level of success is personal to them. It's not my job to say whether they're successful or not. They have to feel that they're reaching that level of success that they desire. But yes, certainly, just not being afraid to learn.
So the last time I checked, you have physical offices in Columbia, Maryland, and in the Cockeysville / Hunt Valley area of Maryland, depending on who you ask.
I say Cockeysville. Some people, they don't like that word, so they say Hollywood. Cockeysville, guys. I hate to tell you, but I guess the funniest thing is when people ask you to spell it.
Oh gosh. I'm from up that way, so I live in Columbia now, but I'm from northern Baltimore County, so I'm well versed.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So tell us about your range, because I mean, you realtors are kind of a funny thing. They tend to be very regional, but there's some rules around that, right? There's some laws, there's some standards around where you can and cannot sell. To talk to us a little bit about your client and your audience and your geography, as it were.
Yeah, so we're a growing company. We're very slow in our growth with bringing people on. I think it's very important that you have the right people. But my approach is very strategic, and we really target markets. So there's 9 main markets that we operate in Maryland, though we're licensed to go anywhere in Maryland. But our big focus is once we get out of our 9 main markets, then we refer the business out at that point. So I think that with real estate, and it's changing. I mean, we just had a podcast the other night about real estate without agents. If we could be replaced, would that be good or bad for the consumer? And there's a lot of talk about that, because they're big disruptors that are really going after everybody's business. It's automation, and but we really believe that a real estate professional should be an expert in the area that they cover. And I think that that's one of the main values that we offer in this business, is because when somebody, and we do both commercial and residential, but we'll just, for a minute talk about the residential aspect. They're really buying a lifestyle. They're buying, more than just a home to live. It's about where, they're going to shop and have fun, and schools and transportation, and everybody's needs are different. And when you're helping that client, you need to know the area. So many people in this business take on clients in areas that they don't have a clue of what's going on in the area, and that can be very harmful to a buyer.
Wow, we should book you for another show just to talk about the black hole that commercial real estate has become in this COVID environment. And I have deep sympathy for people that specialize in commercial realty, because like the restaurant industry, like the entertainment industry, they had their livelihoods literally ripped out from underneath their feet. At least you're fortunate to have that balance, because residential is booming right now, which makes no sense to me. But again, we could probably do another show just on why residential is so hot right now. But yeah, thank you so much. Great stuff. So before we transition over to Allison and her question set, I like to be a little funky, and I like to ask right in the middle of the show. So if somebody wants to work with Todd or one of your amazing people at Sachs Realty, What are the best ways to get more information and get in contact with you?
And just reach out, send me an email. I mean, as you said, we have a YouTube channel. You can check out Sachs Realty's YouTube channel that will let you know more about who we are and what we do. You had mentioned, Mike, about, casting, out that net as far as podcasting. I believe that if you're providing a service, you have to actually provide more value, than maybe what you're getting back, right? We have to give in order to get back. So we're really big proponents of doing that. So we give a lot of information for free and, try and educate, and high tides, all ships rise. So, really our podcast is geared towards consumers, but also agents. We give a lot of great information for that agent that really wants to excel in this business. So absolutely reach out to me anytime. We'll be glad to have a conversation.
Make sure that I've got this right. It is www.sachsrealty.com.
That's correct. Yep, Sachs, S-A-C-H-S. Yep, Sachs Realty, and maybe you can publish some links. But yeah, absolutely.
And I will call you highly competent when it comes to the social media scene, because I know you're on LinkedIn, and I know you're on Facebook, and I know you're on Twitter, and I know you're on Instagram. Hell, you're probably even on Pinterest.
I think I have an account. But Mike, keep in mind, man, I'm over 50. So this stuff is not second nature to me. So there's, for anyone listening that, really wasn't born with a digital device in their hand, there is hope for you. If I can do it, you can do it. Definitely.
Phenomenal. All right, Allison, take it away. I'm really looking forward to your segment with Todd.
Thank you. But Todd, you're a student, right? So I think that it makes perfect sense that social media is in your wheelhouse now, right? So we already talked about that. And I'm glad that we talked a little bit about your podcast, because I was going to veer off topic for just a moment, because I really obviously am interested in podcasts, but I also wanted to hear more about that. So thank you. Cool story. I started my own business also right out of college. I finished just because I didn't think there was an option not to, which is the irony is that my brother never went to college. So like, I don't know where I got that idea, but it never occurred to me that I couldn't go or shouldn't go. And I thought it was a had to thing. But anyway, this is not about me. This is about you. So did you always envision yourself being a business owner, or was it one of those things that you had to take care of your family and keep a roof over your head, and that's just what happened?
Yeah, Allison, let me just backtrack 1 second. When we're talking about, formal education, I'm all about, getting that formal education. I think, I have 2 children, and they both went to college. One, just finished up her master's. And,
Congratulations.
I thank you. And I think it is very important, especially in today's world. I mean, where, it's not just a matter of, getting the college education to get a job. It's even more of what kind of experience do you have. So I think it is important, formal education. I don't think that, the best path, though there are a lot of successful people that have not gone to college and really created, great lives for many people, their families and their employees and things like that. But it's not necessarily the easiest way to go. I mean, it's,
Right.
something to say about continuing past, grade school and getting that more formal education. But I had no idea that I would start my own business. I mean, things went, I came from, my father was a police officer, he was in the Army, a family of, military background. And I always thought that would actually be the path that I would take. I was fit, I was athletic when I was a kid. And, it's probably one of the, if people ask me if I have any regrets, it's probably one of the biggest regrets that I have is that I didn't wear a uniform. I'm very respectful to the ones that have. But I had no idea. It sort of just happened. Where does a strong guy, get a job, without an education? I didn't have a whole lot of, I guess, choices. I did some crazy things that, well, people would think that they're crazy. I mean, I sold encyclopedias door to door when I was 18 years old. And I mean, a lot of people say, what the heck's an encyclopedia? But you want to talk about a job that sucks. That
Yeah.
sucked. But I was actually pretty good at it because I guess I was, ignorant enough to know that it's not a bad thing to knock on somebody's door. I mean, it wasn't good back then either, believe me. I mean, no one really likes that. They say Jehovah's Witness, knock on doors, and you hide from them. Well, believe me, you were hiding from the encyclopedia guy too. But I managed to make a job out of it, and I guess through not being afraid to knock on doors and knowing that I had some skill set with construction and was strong, it just made sense. So I just started working through the neighborhood. One thing led to the next, and I actually got busy. And then, I needed employees. And so it sort of progressed. But no, if you would have asked me when I was 17, 18 years old, starting my own business would never have been a conversation.
I appreciate that. Do you think part of like your boots on the ground first and paving the way has helped you become a great leader? What attributes do you think amount to being a great leader?
Yeah, I think
By the
it's
way,
made me.
we're calling you a great leader. You're not saying that yourself. So we're telling you you're a great leader.
Well, I appreciate that. I think that I'm a difficult leader. I don't think I'm the easiest to be around, and I have this conversation with my people, and they do stick around. But I think first and foremost, to be a great leader, you have to be your biggest critic, and I said that is tough. I think that leadership is not for everybody. There's that joke that some people get up and make things happen. Some people get up and, watch things happen. And then some people get up and wonder what happened. It's fun to joke about that. But the bottom line is I wouldn't gauge somebody's success on whether they're a leader or not, because it takes the leader, and then it takes a lot of team to make it work. And, they say there's no I in team, and it's true. But I think that to be a good leader, you have to be very critical on yourself, because if you're not setting that example, if you're demanding high expectations from your people, you have to demand that of yourself. And, so I work, the hardest, I beat myself up the most. And I think that makes a good leader if you can handle it.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great segue into what makes a great team.
I think a great team is, first, a leader that encourages. I think that to make a great team, you have to have a plan. So I think it all starts with the leadership, because you can have great team members that will leave you looking for that leadership that encourages. So, when you look at, I was raised, so my parents split up when I was a baby, and, my mom moved back home with my grandparents, and they weren't prepared to have a baby in the house. And my grandfather, who had already retired, went back to work a full-time job so that he could afford to have a baby in the house. And, so he was like my dad, and he was a cool guy. I attribute a lot of who I am to him. But the way things were back then was fear-based leadership. So, there was a different type of leadership where, you worked somewhere till you retired and you had pension. That doesn't really exist a lot now. Well, fear leadership certainly doesn't exist at all, because number one, it's not right. And number two, you're not maximizing your team's ability or your company's ability. So, I think that a good team is someone, a team are filled with people that care, that want leadership, but want the platform or the ability to be heard, and that they can use their own innovation and expertise to help and to matter and to be a big part of that growth. And then you have to have the leadership that will allow the reward. So I think, it starts with leadership. And, and then I think that the team has to be held accountable. So again, back to leadership, because they want that. And they want to know that, average isn't enough, that if you're going to win in today's market, and I want to tell you about one of my favorite books at the end here. I know, Mike, that was one of your final thoughts. But business is not easy. Right. So, even for the big companies, it doesn't matter. You have a company or a business that's been in for decades or a century or more, and, you hear of them closing their doors. And so nothing is ever, ever given. It's always, what are you doing right now? And I've been reminded that more than once. It's what you do for me today. It's not what you did for me yesterday or last week. So I think having the right team that understands that it's not personal, but in order for us to continue to win and have opportunity and growth, they have to get that.
Absolutely. And so has this year affected you in a way that, tell us about that, right? Commercial real estate, as Mike already alluded to, I mean, I can't imagine.
Yeah, well, so commercial real estate, like Mike said, it could be its podcast in itself. I will say, guys, things are changing tremendously. There's going to be a lot of, sort of wreckage that is left behind from this year. And it's not just, I want everybody to understand, it is not from the pandemic. We have been trending away from what was called in commercial spaces head down desk space, where the average employee needed 150 square feet of space for an office. We have been going away from that for quite some time. Companies have been pushing to subcontracting, using subcontractors for quite some time. What the pandemic has done is really, it has escalated it, and it has forced the embracing of those changes that were coming anyway. So it's just shown the businesses that they don't need the office space that they were being told that they need, and that they can have productivity even more so from their people at home with their staff using their own electricity and, and working pretty much all the time, because now when you're working at home, you really don't know when to shut it off. So they're getting more from their people. So, but yeah, I think that it's escalated, and we're going to see, certainly people that have been serving commercial real estate, they need to change very quickly. These buildings will be repurposed, and I feel that a lot of them will turn into residential use.
So with that in mind, what's your strategy going forward from a growth perspective?
So our growth is, really to work on our 9 primary markets here in Maryland, but really utilizing our podcast and our, outreach with providing not just Maryland with great advice with real estate, but to be a conduit for people needing, agents all across the country for their real estate needs, whether it's residential, commercial, and being able to connect them through our preferred broker network, which is something that we're focusing on a lot, really building that. And we're already seeing transactions from referrals that we've been given out in various states, and that's happening very quickly.
That's great. That's great. So I know you mentioned some hiccups along the way. So I'd love to focus on a best moment in business, if you could name just one.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the best moment in business happens all the time. And for me, the best moment in business is when I recommit to continue.
I love that.
I think that, for me, being at my age and starting a new business 3 years ago, the biggest thing was asking myself, what the heck am I doing? I mean, my kids said to me, both of my kids said, Dad, you're working harder than you ever have. Most people your age are like unwinding and selling their house and downsizing and thinking about the beach, and you're like just getting started. So I think the biggest moments for me is when, I recommit to why I'm doing what I'm doing. And when I realize that I'm right where I should be, that is the biggest moment for me. And I know it sounds cliche, but it's the honest to God's truth.
Selfishly, I needed to hear that today, Todd. So thank you. That's all I'm going to say. I really appreciate hearing that. It's true with all the things that are happening in the world, right? We're all affected. We're all experiencing it differently while simultaneously. So I love that so much. I think, Mike, with your permission, we just jump into the book part, because
I completely agree.
that was a headliner.
Total book nerd, book nerd word one, book nerd two, and we can add Todd to the book nerd list. So yeah, please tell us.
All right, so I have it next to me. All right, but it's kind of like I don't know where we can pull it into play. You can't see it. Maybe you can. I have a bad habit of losing my covers. Okay, so forgive me. This had a really attractive cover, but I want to tell you guys, this book is 20 years old, and it's still one of my favorites.
Okay.
And I've read it several times, and the name of the book is "It's Not the Big That Eat the Small, It's the Fast That Eat the Slow." And I want to tell you why. And I think, remember when I was saying that you always challenge what it is that people tell you is the way it is, because most of the time it isn't, right? That's not what defines you and makes you successful with what it is that you're doing. And two things in life. We've been taught that money is hard to make. And that's a lie. It's a lie. I've proven it. I think if you're stingy with your money, you won't have it. I think there's a couple laws of the land that really govern us as a human race. And I think that if you believe what you hear and you think that money's hard to make, then it will be hard to make. If you focus on a good service and you're true to it and it helps people, and you focus on helping people, the money will be the byproduct, and it will always be there. I promise you it will. But the biggest thing is that when I was growing up in business, or through the last 30 years, I can't tell you how many times I've heard, well, you have to crawl before you walk. And that's a lie. It's even more so a lie today, because if you're crawling, you're getting run over. So when this says it's not the big that eats the small, it's the fast that eat the slow, guys, you have to know where it is you're going, what it is that you want to do, where it is you're going, and you have to pick up the lowest lying fruit. And we spend so much time in business doing everything that doesn't matter because we don't want to make the call. We don't want to prospect. We don't want to go after it. But the low lying fruit means money, and it's the bank account that you build in order to do anything else. And we have a tendency to try and overthink things, analysis paralysis, that prevents us from grabbing the low-lying fruit and doing the most important things first. If you keep in mind that you have to grow the fastest you can, and what that means is you need sales. So when you focus your plan and you're gearing your day, that becomes number one. If you do that and you put the money in the bank, everything else will fall in place because you will be able to afford to buy it. You can gain that expertise that you don't have by paying someone else to do it, but you got to be good at getting up and running quickly and putting those checks in the bank. This book is great for that. So can't encourage you enough to check it out.
Love it. Thank you. You were fantastic. I'm all pumped up now, and it's 5 o'clock. So I'm like, I need this to be 7 a.m. instead, but that was phenomenal. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you guys.
I'm adding that one to the book list, Todd. Absolutely. And
yeah, I wrote it down.
You hit on several key items there, and I want to key in on a few of them just before we wrap up today. But when you and I were kids, and I knew we were about the same age. I didn't realize you're basically like a year or two older than me. There was this thought, well, you have to go to college, and you got to get a degree because that'll get you a good job, and yeah. Not that you shouldn't go to college, like you said, because education is so fundamental. But I literally was having this conversation with my daughter this morning via text message. She's going to a fabulous college right now. She's a graphic design major. And two of her teachers said, I really want you to shift your focus a little you're incredibly talented and you'd be really well in this subset of the major. And she's saying to my wife and I, what should I do? We said, if you want to do it, you should do it. And she says, well, I feel like I'm wasting my intelligence. And we're like, absolutely not. If this is something you care about, it's something that you love doing. And Todd, you kind of alluded to this. The money will come, because if you're really passionate about something, you really put everything behind it, the money becomes secondary. And if there's one thing that I could go back to my 18-year-old self and tell him that, it'd be like, stop listening to all these knuckleheads. What do you want to do? Go do that. Get really good at that. Go do that, because the world will value you more and they will pay you more. So just absolutely phenomenal. And yeah, I knew you'd be a great interview. Wasn't a doubt in my mind. And you delivered the good, Todd Sachs. So
you did. I wrote so many Post-its. They're all going up on my computer. I'm ready to go make $1 billion tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it.
Thank
Todd
you.
Sachs, president of Sachs Realty and podcast guru and serial entrepreneur. Thank you so much for being on another wonderful episode of Mike and Allison After Hours. And to our audience, thank you for listening today. And remember, people helping people, it is powerful stuff. Make it a great day.
God bless you guys. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining Mike and Allison After Hours. Tune in next time for another great business owner sharing valuable industry ideas. Want to be a guest on our show? Contact us at answers@getadvantage.com.